The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
Deep right, we got hexes up there. Let's follow a range on deep right. I'm doing out right on the target right now. I've got a couple of these right in front of me. I'm going out for it. Right, I got him.
Welcome back to the Lead Pursuit Podcast. Tonight, we're taking a break from aerial wargaming to talk about a more prurient topic. We're going to talk about your mojo. Yeah, baby, that's right, your mojo. Well, before you get all excited there, and we can tell that Chris is way too excited about this topic already, we're talking about your hobby mojo, to be precise. You know, what keeps you motivated to keep you hobbying, to keep you going, even in the dark days of no releases from Warlord or Oompa Loompa miniatures coming out in metal. All right. Tonight, I'm joined by the man who is the fastest dresser from texting, "I was naked in bed," to being live on the podcast. Brett, how's everything down in Jacksonville?
We're recording tonight.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What? Honey, I'll be right back. Now, thanks for joining us on short notice. But speaking of short, we've also got Chris back on the podcast. Chris, good to see you, my brother.
A short joke, man? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
There's 5 million directions you can go in. You went short joke.
I went short. I went short because
you're like an inch taller.
Well, it is that 1 inch. 1 inch makes all the difference in the world. But
you know, that.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's got to be this far. But you know, not to just leave it with the short people, but the rest of the challenged individuals of the world. We brought Matt back on. Matt, how you doing?
Oh, not so bad. How are you?
Oh, doing great. Now, I will tell the audience that if tonight's episode sucks, do not blame me. I am nothing but the paid talent who's not paid a whole hell of a lot. I did not write this episode. In fact, I hate Hobby Progress. I hate Hobby Mojo. I hate talking about hobbying in general. I'd rather talk about shooting airplanes down. But this was a brilliant idea from the rest of the podcast and all the other members. And Matt, thank you for writing the show notes for this. I take
it's no problem. But I also, Steve actually shares most of the blame. He was the one that suggested it and then is conveniently not here to talk about it.
You know, I did notice that. It was Steve's good idea that I tried to immediately shit all over. But you guys convinced me to do it. And yeah, Steve's not even here. So thanks, Steve. Really appreciate it. Oh, and while I'm giving shout outs, let me just get this one out of the way right now. So sometimes wargaming is like Fight Club. You know, you're just not supposed to explain it to your spouses. So this shout out goes to my good friend Tim. My friend Tim, who's married to my coworker. So I got to share this because this is when the hobby world becomes way too small. Now, Tim and I have never met. Tim, I'm calling my good friend in air quotes because apparently he's a war gamer. Apparently he listens to podcasts. My coworker, who she's a remote worker like me, and we do a lot of virtual Teams meetings, she walks into their home office one day and hears my voice coming out of his computer speakers. And literally all she can say is, "What the hell are you listening to?" Because in her mind, why is her husband on a Teams call with me, her boss? So after much back and forth, he's like, "No, it's this new podcast I started listening to, Lead Pursuit Podcast." And she looks at him in the most condescending way possible, goes, "That is my boss you're listening to." So thanks, Tim. Thanks for making the wargaming world entirely too small. All right. Well, enough sharing and oversharing of my life, but let's talk about what's coming up in the schedule. Siege of Vicksburg, which I guess I'm the only one going to, even for the 3rd annual Steve Toth Memorial Blood Red Skies tournament. That's
Virginia, right?
Shut up. That joke never gets old. Poor Steve, not even here to defend himself about that. Okay, BRS tournament is on the 18th, Sunday. The con has a social hour on Friday, but goes Saturday, Sunday, then Monday, being that it's the President's Day holiday. So show up, play some games. We're going to demo some Jet stuff again. We're going to do the tournament, and whoever wants to show up and play. And maybe like last year, I'll come back with a new game to get, Matt and Chris painting up miniatures for that I'll only do like a handful of. So no more games. You guys don't want more games? God, bunch of quitters. All right.
Quitters? I'm the only
quitters.
one that's painted their Marvel Crisis Protocol miniatures. Thank you very much.
That is not true.
Matt, what is Matt?
Well, Matt's painted 4.
I have painted 3.
I'm not retired,
okay?
you jackass.
Painted 3.
No, there's a difference. You're not a house mouse. Let's clarify for the audience at home. You're not a house mouse. That's fine. Now everyone has an image in their mind of Chris in a French maid outfit airbrushing Marvel Crisis Protocol figures. That's a disturbing image.
I don't want to burn that out of my own mind.
You're not going to get that out with bleach.
All right, so moving on. Adepticon, we've beat that dead horse. If you don't know that it's 20 to 24 March, either you're a loser who's not going to go, or you're someone that has a life that doesn't live in your mom's basement and was planning on going. I don't know where that puts us, but show up, Blood Red Skies, Aeronautica Imperialis, bunch of other stuff, drinking beer, hanging out, Chris doing some airbrush classes that are not Airbrush 101, Foot Stomper. And it's going to be a great time. So let's see. After that, all kinds of churn about this next one, Historicon. I won't talk about it. There may be an episode about it. Apparently, a bunch of the board swapped over. I don't know if it's voluntarily, involuntarily, otherwise. Oh, Brett's showing up little airplanes. Those look good. We'll be there. At least Steve and I and Roger Garish will be joining us from the UK. We'll stream some Blood Red Skies. We'll play some Jet stuff. Maybe even play a new game from Warlord Games about tanks that will be coming out that people might be involved in. So we'll do some of that. Won't be at Twisted Lords. We've covered that before. Sorry, John Russell. I apologized to him in person today and said, I love you, but no, we're not going to be there. And then, the guy writing the show notes threw in NashCon. I don't know, man. Matt, are you going to NashCon?
I'm going to try and go. I've got some brownie cookies right now. Brownie cookies, whatever. I've got some brownie
points.
What does that mean? Look, I'm hungry, okay? Anyways, it's in our backyard. I'm going to make an effort to go. I've got some brownie points I need to spend, and that seems like a good target.
All right, so 15 to 18 or something like that, 16 to 18, August. It is right in our backyard. Quick, easy drive. Great event. The HMGS guys up there throw an awesome event, and they're super welcoming for stuff other than just historicals. So there'll be Battletech there. There's 40K, AOS, all that going on. No clue what we're doing, but I know they love when we host a BRS tournament.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, the last year we went, all the boards are gorgeous. Like for every game that we walked around, the bolt action was I think they did a Pacific Theater that they later repurposed for some version of a Vietnam game. Right. I mean, it just looked gorgeous. And then the Marvel Crisis Protocol looked like an entire city. It was really pretty.
They always have a good setup up there. And as we've joked many times about the aerial war game of bombing Ploesti, the most beautiful targets and miniatures that took 4 hours. But hey, it was a beautiful game. So you won't miss out. There's always good stuff up there. And then last but not least, as we've said, Fall In, TBD, going and freezing our nards off up there in the Great White North, but should be a good time. Other events on the schedule, I know probably it won't make it by the time we drop this podcast, but Chris, you guys are doing a Heresy event down in Birmingham this weekend. That will probably just gone by when this podcast hits. Anything else? Any other regional conventions or events that people are wanting to talk about or go to? Brett, anything down in your neck of the woods that's piquing your interest?
I know nothing.
He's no help at all. That's all right. Okay, so let's move over to the flight line and talk about what we've seen in the way of new kit. Couple of things coming out. More bombers from Plane Printer that are Lead Pursuit exclusives. You saw we had 2 Canberras previously. Now we've got the B-57 version. So if you need to do your Indo-Pac wars and you need Canberras that are B-57 US variants, those will be coming out. And as will have already been seen on social media by the time this episode drops, a beautiful F-105 Thud from none other than Steve Toth and Blue Falcon Hobbies. So that will be coming out, another one of our Century Series aircraft, and it will help out for a lot of the Vietnam scenarios and other things. So get a 1/200th highly detailed super whiz bang resin printed F-105, and they're printing as I speak.
When's Steve going to finish the A4?
You'll have to ask him because I think he doesn't care. He doesn't love your A4. He doesn't love A4s like
everyone
you
loves A4.
Everyone
loves A4.
No, not the way you do. How many kits do you have still? 10? You sold from 20 down to 10? Or is it 14?
I'm actually only down to 144 once, and I'm keeping those
I don't believe you. You are a liar.
For 15 millimeter games.
All right. Anyone else see anything cool they want to talk about out there on the interwebs or being released, miniatures or game-wise? Good. All right. So we're going to move on real quick to a new part of our show, a new branch, we'll say. We're going to talk to Intel. No, we're not talking to Matt. We're talking some real Intel here. Good dirt. We're going to talk about rules changes that are coming out in a couple war games, whether it's AI, Blood Red Skies, Missile Threat, or anything else associated. Tonight, we're going to talk about an interesting one for Blood Red Skies real quick. So, whole lot of churn for the last few years over the Home Advantage card. And if everyone remembers, this is the card that allows you to, it's a theater card, discard a boom chit, make it go away. And it started off as a card that was a discard, so you got to play it every turn. Imagine that in an open deck kind of setting. Then in 2021, it became a remove, which I think most of us breathed a sigh of relief, like, oh, thank God, someone can't throw away a boom chip per turn. And then in 2022, it came back out as a discard. So flip-flopped back and forth. And kind of everyone, I think, thought that remove was going to be the way it would go. But I know, especially guys like Brett playing campaign games, that can have a huge impact. I mean, that comes up as a theater kind of specific card for Battle of Britain in some of those suggested theater card lists. So, whether that's throw away one boom chit a game or one boom chit every turn, that probably makes a big impact in what you guys do, right?
Yeah, that would have a pretty substantial impact, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys ever ran into it in any of your campaigns, having to figure out which version you were playing.
Yeah, I don't know that Steve ever pulled that one. Not once.
Poor bastard, he should have.
I always got hit with supply shortages or something every time.
Yeah, another one where you're like, thanks, I get jammed with a boom chit right at the beginning of the game. But yeah, so it could have a pretty strategic impact if the rules change it. And the discussion has come up before. So it came up in 2022, came up again last week. Every time Andy has said, no, it's supposed to be discard. You're supposed to be able to play it once per turn. And then I think we'd all kind of had enough this week. And at least Mark Barker rebelled, I rebelled and said, this just doesn't make sense, guys. But it also didn't make it in the errata. So there literally were 3 versions of cards out there. There was a discard with no date. There was a remove with a date of 2021 and a discard with a date of 2022. So if you didn't own all of them, it was hard to know which was the most current. Andy did come out and several times say he wanted it to be discard. He waffled a little bit as we were looking at current versions of the card. But as soon as he realized that Warlord had in fact printed a 2022 version, or the latest version they had on file was the discard, that sold him on that's the way it's going to be. So whatever, water under the bridge. The reality is there's 2 versions of the cards floating around. So we're going to continue to use the remove version in our tournaments, simply because it's a good thematic card. It allows people that are playing the defender role to have a theater card that allows them to discard one boom chit anytime during the game. But we also make it clear that we're not going to use in the tournament setting. In the banned list, we put the discard version. So if you're coming to a GOE event, if you're coming to a Lead Pursuit event, just understand that you'll see the Home Advantage card on the Battle of Britain table for the defender. And that means she can only discard one boom chit. So play that. Yes, sir, Mr. Cantor. What can I do for you?
Maybe it's a little holdover from our previous conversation about house rules, but it might be fun in a campaign setting if you pull that card that maybe you get a buff to your, bailout and crash landing rolls or something. You know.
And there's a derivative of the card called can't remember what the name of it is now. I'm drawing a blank. But it's a Russian themed card, and it allows you, when you exceed your boom chit to airplane threshold, it allows you to make a pilot skill roll on your highest pilot and get a boom chit back. So there's some other interesting ways to do things, and like you say, you can house rule something neat that when you have the home advantage, there's other things to do rather than just throwing away boom chits. But like any game, we're going to go through revisions. All I ask is, please, Andy, put things in the errata, because then I don't lose my mind trying to keep track of it as a TO. But not a big deal either way. Other thoughts on the home advantage card? Of course, Chris right now is thinking home advantage card. I haven't seen a Blood Red Skies card in over 3 years.
Not true. I put a bunch of them in a box yesterday. It's right here.
Called the trash
and I'm
can.
Mail them all to Brett.
Excellent.
I don't actually ever remember seeing the card, or maybe I just didn't pick it for whatever reason. But like, has it come up in a GOE tournament, or did
it has, and it's been argued a couple different ways, but I think all of us kind of said when it came up, we're like, this makes no sense to be a discard. This has to be a remove. And then it was changed to remove. So we'd always played it as remove. And the hilarious thing is there was, and I'm trying to remember which one it was. I want to say it was last year's GOE that it had actually changed back. Andy had said, I want it to be a discard. And the guy that played that table, I didn't say anything. They didn't say anything. It was this question to see how it would get played, and they only played it as a one-time use. So I think that's what everyone assumes it would be. Why would I get to give one boom chit a turn?
Is it that card and the numbers card that was always
so there's a couple things.
Controversy?
Yeah, we threw a couple cards into the, as we call them, the banned list. And it's not that they're bad cards. They're just cards that don't fit a tournament setting because they're so unbalanced. Things like numbers, where you get a free airplane, restrictive airfields, where you get to pull an enemy's airplanes, you get to remove airplanes from his force. Yeah, exactly. You've been the victim of that one. That's not much
Yes,
fun.
that's the one I get hit with all the time.
Well, and to me, it's a good thematic card for part of a campaign. It can be very frustrating, but in a tournament setting, it really can shift the balance rapidly. And so that, and the home advantage version. So there's a couple cards that we highly suggest people don't use because we put them on the banned list. But at the end of the day, if you want to do a tournament that's a different format than ours, we're not going to show up and melt all your little resin models down. Do what you want to do. Have fun.
That's a lie. Doug will show up with the flamethrower.
No, I will not melt your resin models. I might show up, handcuff you to the table, flog you with a wet noodle, and say, you should never do that again, right? In my Adeptus Sororitas costume, right? Now, there's an image everyone really didn't need.
Well, now I'm going to have to drink more.
Exactly. Okay, I think we've really beat that dead horse. So who wants to talk Hobby Mojo? Do we want to start the main part of the show? All right.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we do. And because Matt wrote these show notes, I'm going to emphasize that again. We're going to start with the definition, just like last episode when Matt's like, we have not defined this term. We're going to define the term.
I'm a product
of
my training.
You are. Matt, why don't you define Hobby Mojo for us?
Well, it's kind of an elusive term. What was the word I used that you deleted? That I was so mad.
Effervescent? No, that was
no, it wasn't effervescent. That's for things like white wine and spritzers. Yeah. No, it's everything's going according to plan. You're feeling good about whatever you're doing, whether that's modeling or writing up a tournament list or whatever the end goal is. In my case, a lot of times it's just building the model. So like, for example, Marvel Crisis Protocol is really fiddly, but I really enjoy putting them together because it really gets me in the groove with doing stuff. Same thing with like...
You used the term there. You used hobby groove. You're in the groove,
just to be real chill, man. Like, it's all working, dude.
Yeah. Okay, so that's your definition of Hobby Mojo. I'm going to turn it over to Chris because Chris may differ a little bit from you there. Talking about your hobby motivation, your Hobby Mojo, how do you kind of put it all into one box?
It's just that spark. it's that spark that makes you want to sit down at a table and do something. And that comes and goes for any hobbyist. Lately for me, it's been almost crushing. Everybody knows I'm a heresy gamer. Have always loved army building. And when I came back here, I got into AI, and I even enjoyed squatter building. But I just hit this wall like 3 months ago, and it was like, I don't want to look at the same model twice. I cannot do putting 20 models on the desk and going through them.
So what you're saying is thank you, Doug, for introducing me to Marvel Crisis Protocol and getting my addiction started with those miniatures. You're welcome. You're welcome, Chris. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I am glad you did that. I just wish you would follow through on your half and you would paint yours so we could play.
Building little spaceships.
Like always.
Little spaceships.
For your other family.
I'm sorry you're not the cool kids playing with little spaceships.
But no, it is just that desire and that spark to sit down at the table and to do what you're doing where you're really interested in it. And it comes and goes for people, and it can really crush you. And I've walked away from the hobby for months at a time because you just can't find that spark.
Okay, Brett, I'll let you define it, and then I'll be the contrarian that I'm always been.
For me, it's just a consistency thing. I always have a pretty big queue under the desk here, so projects that none of them are usually very big projects, but it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to, so I have a prioritization of things I'm going to work on. For me, when I'm in my best like flow state is when I'm able to do something every single night, even if it's just a small amount, right? 30 minutes, an hour. That's pretty ideal for me. If I can do that regularly, that's when I feel the best. And when I start getting frustrated, it's not that I'm not usually frustrated or lack motivation for doing the project. It's usually I get distracted.
Yeah.
It's really
That's kind of what I was going to go down, is that it's rarely not a motivation problem for me. It's a freaking hours in the day problem. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but mine is not, I know when Steve brought up the topic to all of us, he kind of said, your hobby motivation. I'm like, shit, I got a ton of hobby motivation. I got nothing for hobby time. And so I think what enables people to hobby is a lot of different things, but we tend to either lump it into motivation, timing, a lot of things. And I think there's always an interplay between all of them. And that if you don't have a lot of time, you may be motivated to get stuff, but you're not necessarily super motivated to find that 30-minute slice at the end of the evening, like Brett's saying. And to, in a sense, discipline yourself to do it, which, depending on your personality, either snowballs into, oh, I never get to hobby, this sucks, or it, in my case, bubbles up in frustration where you just turn off the work computer and you say, they owe me 3 days of comp time. I'm going to hobby for the next 3 days. I can sit in front of my laptop all I want, and it's not going to help. They owe me the comp time. It's time to make little spaceships. So, got pinning and gluing on my little spaceships.
Like you said, it does, the lack of motivation, the motivation, like your motivation is constant to do it. But this is kind of moving into what makes you lose your hobby mojo, is that I only have 30 minutes, and whatever the project is might look daunting, and I know it's going to take longer, and I'm not going to finish the parts I want to finish.
Well, what's funny is, so that's,
or in that
I was
time,
to bring that up. And that's what I guess I don't think that way, and I don't understand why I don't think that way. Because for me, just with the way my schedule is, my hobby it doesn't feel overwhelming. I don't feel like I'm not going to be able to accomplish something in the amount of time. I just literally run out of hours in the day before I look at my watch and go, I think I'd rather drink beer or get some sleep at this point. And it's a conscious choice. But I think it's kind of a learned skill, because it's like Chris and I have talked about with airbrushes. When you learn to field strip your airbrush and clean it and put it back together in 2 minutes, then you're comfortable with the airbrush. And like for me, the reason I don't airbrush isn't because I'm, anxious about it or whatever. It's literally because it's sitting in my garage. It's exactly opposite from where my hobby space is. And I don't have a physical layout here. So I have to consciously say, no, tonight's not about pinning and modeling. It's not about super gluing. It's not about green stuffing, mold seam lines in the ships. It's going to be about sitting down at the airbrush that is, 100 feet away, the story down and in my garage where it's cold right now. So I think it's just an interesting difference in personalities. I mean, Chris, you churn through so many miniatures. It's easy to understand how you get a burnout that I don't get. I just don't burn out on the hobby. I just don't get enough of it is my problem.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the difference. I'm an army painter, and I know I'm an army painter. I have to have a project where we're looking at typically 75, 100 miniatures that you're going to crank through for a project. And that's something I know a lot of the people in our gaming circles now, especially with the AI, that's just not something people do. And it's neat because I've finally met a part of the gaming community where we've got more like kind of D&D gamers and one-page rule guys. And so a lot of skirmish type guys. And that's where I found Marvel Crisis Protocol fascinating because it's a chance to just do different things. But at the same time, I know at my heart, I'm an army painter and I'm going to go back there. It was just getting myself, it's almost like clearing your brain out. And I think the big part of my lack of mojo was coming from Germany where I had a garage hammer buddy that I was playing with almost twice a week. And we were playing Warhammer. We were totally invested in heresy projects. And then that stopping cold and coming back to a community where there was almost no support for heresy.
We don't play Space Marines here.
I know.
You only have our Thunderhawks.
Zero. Yeah, I have a huge Emperor's Children project, but I had just zero desire to sit down and put the hours into that. And I just started doing smaller projects. And now I'm getting forward.
And I can understand that. It's funny when I look at some of my heresy stuff and I ask, why have I not done the heresy stuff? It's not that the project is too daunting. It's not that that there's too much that I need to get done because I have a shit ton of it, much like my regular 40K. But it's like, I'm like, I'll paint it and it's going to go sit over there. But I know if I paint little spaceships, me and my fun friends, not you all, my fun friends, are going to go play spaceship games. Or I know if I invest time in doing Aeronautica miniatures, that I'm going to go play Aeronautica. Yet, you could turn the question around on me. You could go, well, Doug, why haven't you decaled your miniatures? And I go, well, it's a priority. I'd rather, I can play with those over there that look good enough. And these that don't look good enough to even put on the table because they're in pieces, they have to get done before the next game. So it's an interesting prioritization once again for me. How can I get the max number of armies on the table? But even as and I wish I could remember who. I was talking to Don Ayers, and we were saying, why are we comfortable with less than perfect armies? And it's because we came from hex and counter games. And our worst case is if you throw us back in our old ways, we'll play with a piece of cardboard. I'll play with my little Battletech stand-ups over there, the little fold in half cards with battle mechs on them, because that's what I grew up playing with. So I have a better imagination than all you fucking miniature people. Maybe not. Brett, tell us your tales of woe about your hobby progress and your Hobby Mojo.
I don't have any big projects, right? Most of my projects are pretty modest in size. I just have a lot of them.
60 aircraft stripping, cleaning, repainting for the furball. I call that a big project, even for small aircraft.
That's probably my biggest project, and that's the highest priority because I got to get them done by a certain time. But my challenge is I have lots of little projects, and so when I start feeling down, like when I'm not getting regular hobby progress in, I start to feel sort of the weight of like, dang, I'm never going to get to that thing. And the projects are all really kind of different. So I have different reasons that I'm motivated for each one. And when I start to get down, it's because I'm not making regular progress. I'm not getting through the queue to the next thing that's on my mind. Because I think I tend to I'm doing the decal or the panel lines now on a 60 aircraft. And I'm pretty satisfied with the way that's coming, but I'm kind of bored of it already because now it's just monotonous. It's the same thing over and over again. And I'm kind of looking down. Production. Yep. Yeah, I'm looking down here like, ooh, man, that's right. I have that thing. I can't wait to put that thing together. But it just reminds me of like, I got to keep steady working on this thing, not just get it done on time, but so I can get to that other thing that's now, seems more interesting.
That's why I've binned a lot of projects into containers. So literally I don't have to look at The only thing staring at me are a bunch of full thrust ships, and then yes, it still hasn't been done yet. My Stormbird. So yeah, I still gotta get that bad boy primed. He didn't make it to the priming bench today, and I'm afraid it's going to be too wet and cold over the next couple of days. I don't know that I'll get him primed before next week, but I got a lot of little ships primed. It'll be fun to paint tomorrow. So it's a trade off.
I bet we're probably going to talk about maybe some techniques to keep yourself motivated. But you mentioned one: keeping stuff out of sight. That's not that the stuff that's in my queue. I don't have it on my desk. Very rarely. I have a few things back here that are sort of visible to me, but anyway, I tend to keep everything except the project I'm currently working on out of sight.
I'll let Matt, the author of this wonderful episode, lead us through the ways to, quote, get your hobby mojo back, baby.
Brett really hit the nail on the head, is keeping focus on that one project you're trying to do. But like Chris was getting to, like army building, that gets monotonous after a while. You're painting the same thing, and in case of Space Marines, you're doing the same colors
two of us that make fun of
over
Space
and
Marines.
over and over again. Well, I just did it because you did it. It's imitation. It's flattering.
I feel so flattered. Yeah,
you should. But it goes for Blood Red Skies too. If you're doing a lot of this, like British aircraft or the same pattern, U.S. Navy aircraft especially, where it's the same pattern over and over again. They don't even really have very interesting decals for the most part to kind of break up the monotony. If I've got something else on the desk that looks more interesting and I get a little bored, there's a chance I might never finish that squadron.
Yeah, that's literally why I think I have Full Thrust, the Stormbird, and what are these? Oh, it's my other unbuilt Marvel Crisis Protocol that are sitting there in the hobby bin. But I literally try to keep literally one to two projects on the desk. One, because otherwise it becomes more of a disaster than it already is, and two, then they just never get done. But what I'll say is I've gone to reach down beneath the desk and get to these transparent bins, because if I put them in boxes that I can't see what the project is, then I'm never going to look at it. It's going to go into the closet of doom, and it will never come out. So I've had to label and bin my projects in there so that I know what's in there. Because what's funny for me, and I don't know if anyone else is this way, it could be in the shrink wrap, in the very box that says, basically Syrian T-62s or whatever on it. But guess what? I'm still not going to do it until I take it out of the plastic and box and put it in a bin and label it as, Team Yankee T-62s. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to build those. So
I'm curious about the queue you guys maybe keep. So we talked a little bit about how either kind of keep it hidden or semi-hidden. What is your queue? Is all of your queues of stuff to do, is it all projects that have, you got to get this done for a particular game? Or do you have, like for me, I have stuff that I may never play, but it's like, man, I really want to do this thing. And it becomes part of the priority. But I've got some projects down there that are, something I just want to paint for funsies, I guess.
Well, that's what's bumped most of my small armor projects, is that there's no game to go with them. And so like where we are right now, getting ready for Adepticon, all my terrain stuff has come back up, and Chris and I were talking about it today. I'm like, okay, do I have the right number of these kits? Do I have the right number of those? I've got way too many of the Spires kits. Never thought I'd say that. But there's a point where some of my stuff keeps getting rolled because it doesn't necessarily have a game, and I really want to build it. I mean, I really want to build some of these Cold War tanks. But sadly, other projects keep pushing them, and when will I get to them? I don't know. When I stop building Aeronautica terrain and having fun with that. Yeah.
That's my Arena Rex.
yeah, exactly. We all have that box of stuff that we are never going to get to. I actually have an old Lehman Russ tank, 40K in there, that I wanted to customize and flip and do all the custom turrets and everything on, and I'm never going to get there. I might as well just sell it now because it's a project for an army that I don't even need it over in that display case. So.
Yeah, I don't necessarily keep a queue, and I think it's part of my problem is lately it's just been kind of like hobby ADHD, and that's been my entire time I've been in the hobby. I get intrigued by the next shiny thing that comes down the pipe, And I like right now I'm fighting Old World. I mean, I've got so many friends that are like, I'm getting back into Old World, get
You
your
two
fantasy
can spend thousands of dollars on shitty 1990s casts.
And you know what? If it wasn't for the fact that that's exactly what they did with Tomb Kings, I would go and have gone
paid
and bought the
too many
Tomb Kings
hundreds
box.
of dollars for hundreds of little shitty 1990s casts.
Games Workshop did me a favor by keeping those crappy sculpts around, because that's what kept me from going and buying a new box of miniatures, which I didn't need.
Well, and I will say this in everyone's defense, because I do use the full thrust, not very good looking sculpts at all as my great example. Is there's some nostalgia to some of these things, and if people have had, especially these armies, either painted and they love playing with them, and it hurt their heart when the old world got destroyed. Or if they're like me and you're getting into it and you have a bunch you haven't built and you're like, wow, I'm going to get back in and build nostalgic kits that really don't look that nice. For the amount of money that I spent on these metal kits, I could have gotten a fleet off Etsy, So, but the point is that fleet didn't look like the fleet that I played in the 90s and that I grew up with as the full thrust spaceship line. So there's a point to playing with old sculpts.
Yeah, I mean, my queue is probably like Chris's, just completely all over the place. I think just this year,
I find that so hard to believe based on your model purchases and your miniature
sales.
purchases.
No, they've been sales.
Sales. Okay, sales.
Well, then
it's a good thing I didn't bring you any limited edition Macross models from.
Yeah, it absolutely is, because I'm queuing up to sell my other Macross models that I know I'm not going to get to. But like just this year, I was working on. You
didn't want the big SDF one that you could buy it in like full version.
If I had, there's no way I can hide that box. Like Haley would have seen it, and that would have been the end of me. I would no longer be on the podcast.
Yeah.
Where's Matt? He's dead.
He's dead. Dead. DEAD dead. Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, I've gone from this year doing 15 millimeter sci-fi stuff from based on the Machine & Krieger model kits,
right?
From Japan to doing what limited Liber, or was it Liber? I've forgotten the name now. LI. Stuff from Games Workshop
Legion Imperialis
to MCP, and then I'm trying to finish up my Italians for BRS.
Oh, Italians!
So it's been I was looking through my pile today, and I had done both the I primed and done that dark or the light brown and the like kind of bluish bottom to a bunch of C55s. Like they're already done. I just need
Chris, you could give Matt all of your Italians.
I'm not giving up my Blood Red Skies planes. I will play with them someday. It's just that it's just not my thing right now. So I just have no desire. We talked about the biggest thing with Blood Red Skies. I can't stand rolling that many dice and only hitting on sixes. It frustrates me to no end.
You play Aeronautica Imperialis and you play,
and I hit on fives, and there's a huge difference.
Got a badass in here.
It's a lot of. I know. It's just it just doesn't appeal to me right now. But I love my models. I love the Italians.
All of you have worthless excuse matrices. Yes, matrices. That's the word of the night. Excuse matrices. It's all right. It's all right. All right. Well, so some of the other things you guys threw out here for ways you get your mojo back. Inspiration. I.e. movies, books, podcasts, certainly not this fucking podcast, or YouTube, like Chris staying up until 2 a.m. watching YouTube last night. Nice work. Almost missing one.
I almost did, but that really does. That is one of the things that gives me more mojo than anything else. Guys like SN Battle Reports or the big Battle Report channels. It's for me. I've got a Heresy event coming this weekend. I haven't rolled dice in 7 months, so it's kind of like I'm doing battle reports because it's a way to refresh yourself on rules. But that really does do it. I mean, when you see other people's amazingly painted crap, that's the whole reason I do Heresy, is because everybody has a high standard when it comes to the hobby.
Even that guy with the red rattle can Thousand Suns army, and
we all pushed his shit in and walked away from it after that was over. So I crushed his soul, and that was fun. So, but yes, that guy too.
All right. So one of the other ones was community, quote, social media. All right, Matt, defend yourself on this one. Tell me how that helps your hobby mojo.
So
That was actually me.
Oh,
Yeah, I
it was
was
you
about
that
to say
wrote
that
that
was
one
Chris.
in?
Yeah, that was
Chris?
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
do
That
that.
was actually
Chris?
that was
Is that
actually
because you
that was
see
actually
everyone
me.
else's nice models on social media? That's your
It's
Hobby
not just
Mojo?
well.
Yeah,
When
I'll
I
be
say
honest, that just
social
makes me
media,
sad.
No.
No.
I can't paint that
Before
well.
Chris can say anything, I don't get sad. It neither frustrates me nor inspires me. It actually amuses me because I think I've started counting the number of people who are like, "Here's my first model," and they put it on there. I'm like, "Yeah, sure, that's your first model." Right.
Yeah, but were you an art student?
Exactly. Did you major in model painting? Yeah.
when I
Photos of
said
people's stuff really motivates me for 40K and to some degree Blood Red Sky stuff, 28 millimeter stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
I see those things and I'm like, oh man, I've got to do that. That looks cool. Or like I'll see a technique or whatever that I just think it just looks good. And I'm like, oh man, I should
I don't know.
come up with a reason
my
to do
brain
that.
just works differently because I'll see those and be like, bloop, throw that technique in the back of my brain, which means forget it. And so, 6 months from now, after seeing the video today on painting copper and things, I'm like, I got to paint another one of my custodies and do copper. How did I see that again? Yeah, and I'll remember the technique.
You know what has actually been, and this is kind of social media adjacent, has been the Monument Hobbies ads.
Mm-hmm.
Those, for some dumb reason, have been really, really motivating because they're both funny.
Sad.
And then I kind of scroll through, and they're like mini tutorials that they have where they're like just real quick speed painting, or I mean they're speeding it up, so it's not really speed painting, but I'm like, okay, all right, that looks attainable. I could probably do that. And
yeah, and Army Painter's
you know.
done that recently with their metallics line, and so you see just the tweaking of a few different metallics and things mixed with metallics, and how that allows you to get some pretty cool effects. But I'll say this has always been my complaint about social media. There will be great information put out there, but the impermanence of social media, you're like, where the hell is it when I need it 6 months later?
You know what?
I see that video.
I was thinking about this the other day, and this just is not, I mean, you guys are all older than me, but like to age me a little bit, it was like, I kind of miss internet forums where you could actually search.
I could find stuff in the forums and I could find things.
You just use the search
Those
function.
bulletin boards was awesome.
Bullying your modifiers. It was great.
Yeah. Well, no, I still laugh because I remember years ago in the photography world, a very ponderous international organization run by a bunch of old men could not break away from forums for that reason. They're like, we don't need a Facebook account. Why would we put our members' images on Instagram? But their idea was they wanted to save things for posterity. So a forum was the best way. And I said, yeah, a vault's also a great way to save it for posterity. But no one gets to enjoy it then. So I think there's a balance. And I think one of the things for me I have to learn to do is to make a physical record or save a link. Look at the Instagram thing. Go follow the link. Save that link so I can go back to it under Hobby Techniques years later and go, oh yeah, that's right. I can find the video that this was linked to.
Most of the social media stuff I run across, it inspires me for technique stuff more than build stuff.
Well, I would have said that. I would have said that, except did everybody see the best Titan build ever today? Oh,
yeah.
It was the Titan hot tub, the top of a Warlord Titan that was done as a hot tub with Marine's helmet sticking out of it, and one Marine on the side rocking out. Oh, it was pretty funny. I saw that and I'm like, all right, that just inspired me for a build. I don't know what I would do to beat that, but a hot tub on top of a Titan, yeah, that does it.
I get if there's conversations about like our aircraft spotlight episodes or sometimes battle reports or media content about how maybe something in a game works. A discussion about like gameplay, not about technique, not even picture, right? That stuff inspires me to build new stuff. Like, oh man, I got to build that tank. That sounds like something cool to add to the army, or kind of in that context. So different kinds of motivation. So I get in the videos and the photos, like the tutorial videos and the videos or images people put up of the work they've done. Those really inspire me to like, oh man, I want to paint black like that, or something like that. And then the other stuff motivates me like, oh man, I want to build P40s now. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
what you're saying is, if I do more episodes about tactics, you'll actually build the rest of the aircraft for the furball.
Okay, yeah, I'll do
That sounds
that.
like a great idea. Yeah, I'm in. Sorry, go ahead, Matt. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say that's a double-edged sword where, seeing some really cool miniatures maybe that I don't have is just going to force me to buy something, and then it's going to end up on that pile of shame.
I used to be that way. I don't know what
Yeah.
changed. Maybe something budgetary in my brain changed, but I used to totally be that way. And literally now I think indoctrinated myself. And I know the first recent release I did this on was when we brought the squats back. So all of a sudden, when you now got these little dwarfy guys that look really cool, I just looked at it, I was like, not going to buy it, because I know there's so much shit in my queue. It's going to be at the end of it. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I have to lose a ton.
I can back you up on that, because I have witnessed you over the years transition from the Doug of not, I'm going to get that, but how many boxes of that are we going to buy on initial release?
Yeah.
To are you really going to make me buy that game and play with you? you have done that pendulum swing over the last couple of years, and it's I have
it's like LI. I love the models in LI. I hate the rules, and I haven't even finished reading the rule book. And so I am now in this quandary of, I have a decent amount of the initial starter stuff for LI, and I don't love the game right now, but that might change. We'll see.
How did I read the rule book before you?
Because I was building little spaceships for my other friends. I don't know.
Oh, you bastard. You traitorous bitch.
I am. Oh, it's because I was assembling all my Marvel Crisis Protocol. That's why.
No, you weren't.
They're assembled mostly.
I've been reading the end of, what is it? Chris, help me out here. The end of the death. And you guys all know I've got a ton, at least a cabinet full of blue Marines, but damn, I want to paint red now.
And that is part of it.
Little 8mm, you can paint little red guys.
That is a big part of it. And I can tell you that I finished the End in the Death the other night. One, it was like I got up and I had 12 hours to go in it. And I was like, my wife went on vacation to her parents. But I'm home, and I was like, yeah, I'll knock a couple hours of it out. Next thing I knew, I'm doing a 8-mile walk when I usually do a 4-mile walk. And I finished the whole thing. I could not put it down. And I walked away from that experience with, I'm going to go get some heresy models out. And those are the kind of things that just get charged in there,
but
and get you amped
and
up.
This is the funny thing. So I was talking to Don Ayers about this. He said, hey, probably not this year, maybe not even next year, but we need to do an LI scale Siege of Terra. And I looked at that and I'm just like, because my brain immediately went to, how's the game going to play? Not that, I would love to put that many fists and blood angels and everybody on the table. That would be cool. But my first thought was, I'm like, is this going to play like your Gettysburg games? Are we going to be playing it 1-to-1?
I've always wanted to build a 40K version of my old, I think I was like 11 or 12, and I got the Castle Grayskull playset. Yeah. I've always wanted to build a 40K version. Oh, I can actually do that. Like, the scale is perfect. I could build an immense
Fortress of Solitude.
That's right. Yeah, it'll be awesome. I'm kind of jazzed about LI, even though I haven't purchased the first model, but
they're beautiful. I
love
them, and I've enjoyed the ones that I've built. It's just, if there's anything that's the most like losing your mojo, it's, I did all the different samples, and I just had to step back, because I had to, the ones I had to break from being vested in whatever the last thing I painted in, and go, I'm going to walk away from it and come back and look a month later and go, is that paint scheme tolerable, or is that one that was much more difficult? Is that what I want to do for every freaking vehicle? And walk through that. And as Chris and I were discussing on the ride back from lunch today, I'm actually going to go with the easier technique that I didn't really like, but it looks different than other people's Imperial Fists. So 1, it looks different on the table, and 2, it's something I can crank out an entire army in a pretty quick fashion once I get them assembled. Yes, sir, Mr. Chris.
Well, I'll say with LI, and we're talking about mojo, it keeps your mojo or what loses your mojo. I can tell you that my LI mojo went when I got the set, and even though I knew some things were going to be included, I'm starting to read the rules a little bit, watching some battle reports, and the game's just factually incomplete. It's just incomplete.
I was going to say,
We need the next book. We need the rest of the models. I'm sorry, but you can't play Space Marines without freaking Land Raiders.
I have Land
Raiders, and I'm in.
yeah.
I have Land Raiders. You don't have Land Raiders?
Raiders.
You don't have
Well,
Land
Well,
Raiders?
you can print them, but we don't have rules for them yet. So it's
Yeah.
like kind of like just like I'm in pause mode. When they get it out the door and they get it complete, I'm going to jump on the train. And if I don't like the rule set for LI, I've got gorgeous models, and I'll just run right over and pick up some of the epic rules that are out there, and we'll play.
We'll all play
older
Second Edition Epic, or we'll play
Absolutely.
Dirt Side too. We'll play something else with all those
Exactly.
models. Yeah, it's
we'll make it work.
To what degree did the like the new plane releases jazz you up to like, oh man, I gotta grab the thud, I gotta grab a bunch of thuds and get those painted up, stuff like that.
You know what? That I'll be honest, that had me eyeing my F8s again, and I think I have some A6s that Casey sent me that I'm looking at real hard now. And I'm like, I would really like to paint some Vietnam stuff again.
So that's funny, because Chris and I were talking just about this very thing, that we have still, well, you're about to ship yours off, a metric butt ton of AIM models. And I have a ton of Vietnam ones that are still unpainted. And now I have even nicer ones that are Steve 3D designs that Casey's printed. And so my problem is I'm still literally at the point of I'm functionally with the same models, and I'm not really ready to paint them yet. Even though I really want to do Vietnam stuff, I'm like, there's other stuff that's in the queue ahead of it, and I feel like I got to finish those things because I'm halfway through the fleet build, and I know if I stop painting, if I've done one of every ship class and then just don't finish out the rest of the ships, I'll be really unhappy with myself. So for me, it's it's kind of a discipline thing. I'm like, all right, I know I want to do 4 F-105s, but those will wait.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat. I want to finish up my Crisis Protocol stuff. I'm almost done with my Web Warriors. I've got, I think, Spider-Man and Black Cat and Moon Knight to finish, and that's my base Web Warriors. That I think 6 that I could play, potentially when we get around to it. But then I think the next thing I'm going to put on the table might be some Vietnam aircraft. Yeah,
my MCP is over there. It is the next. It's third in line, which this is the funny thing. So the spaceships for my real friends, then getting back with the LI, build a unit now. So it's no longer a sample model. Because that's kind of my next step, is to build a unit, see what a unit looks like before I commit to every single model being painted in this, this theme. And Marvel Crisis Protocol is right behind that. So the good thing is I've got the characters I care about done. Now I have to do the rest of them to fill out a force of characters I really don't care about, because I gave away my Magneto. I gave away some of the other ones I liked, but that's all right. I don't have a Black Widow anymore. So yeah, that's all right. Yeah, but Chris does. What do you know? Chris has got all these great characters. Jackass.
I might get Wolverine painted before you get your Wolverine painted.
My Wolverine's painted. Mine's done.
It is?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the one he's finished.
Bitches. Yeah.
Wolverine Storm.
I've got Wolverine Storm. I've got, let's see here. Iron Man is done. I have actually, I spoke too soon. I have not finished Cyclops. So,
well, I mean, he's
the last X-Men that he's a raging douche nozzle, but whatever. I need him because he's a team lead. So yeah.
But I mean, this kind of speaks to one of the other, like, getting a Hobby Mojo back is having an event or a planned game to motivate you to get stuff done.
That doesn't motivate me. That just stresses me out. It's like all
might
this
stress you out, but it's a good stress. It's getting you to do something. So, like, for example, because
I needed more little buildings. When
we used to meet at Wednesdays at
the
game shop that closed, like,
yes,
you'd always pull something new on me. Be like, hey, let's try. It would be like Korea this week, and then let's try Vietnam with the ACM rules next week. And I was like, oh shit, I haven't finished that. So I would be like the night before, furiously trying to paint something before we met up, so I could throw it in the car and hope it was dry by the time we got there. There was a couple times I actually painted some things before work and was stuck in the back of the car. I was like, oh, hope it doesn't fall over, because that's gonna be that's gonna be weird if it's got some a lint on it or whatever.
Yeah, it's a hairy airplane.
That worked for Steve and me having a goal. Like we had a game set to play at our next gathering. So we had a few months to crank out a bunch of bolt action stuff, and we did pretty good. We both got our stuff all painted up for that. So that was that kind of helped us stay motivated.
Yeah, Acon's got me charged right now because it's. I know that I've got a good friend coming all the way from Germany to play, and we're playing in the doubles. He wanted to play Word Bearers, and I've for years wanted to do some Dark Mech, and there's great new rules out, so that's what I'm doing. That's my primary focus right now. That and terrain is just getting some demon engines done, so that I've got something new to put on the table at Adepticon. I think I've always used Adepticon as that benchmark too. Whenever I go to Adepticon, I've always had, if not a new army, I never got to the point where I was doing new armies for it like some people do, but at least some new portions of the army that have never been fielded before, and you try to target Adepticon, kind of like Doug did with his jump pack Marines that we finished the night before the game. Yeah,
they're fucking finished, aren't they, bitch?
Will you come help me get?
They played just as well.
Legal tonight. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, well. I think definitely having markers on the table helps, and that goes back to that community thing a little bit too. Knowing that you're going to be rolling dice in the future, and I know you put that on the sheet, Matt, was that is an inspiration. Knowing that you're physically going to be playing games, because there's a large part of this hobby for a lot of people that they just don't get a lot of games in. I know specifically in the Heresy community, there are some Heresy gamers that show up every year to Adepticon Heresy, and that is the only time they roll dice. And they will spend the entire year building an army for that one opportunity to roll dice. And I don't understand that, don't fathom it, but there are people out there like that. But it does help having that inspiration. Like we have just finally, I found some people here in the Alabama area that want to play Heresy. They're kind of scattered all over the state. Marines. They do. But it's just in the last couple of days, we've created a Facebook page for it. We're trying to link everybody together. We've got a guy that wants to shepherd it. He's an LVO Adepticon guy. He wants to get people playing, and we've already got one on the calendar, and we're going to try to work ourselves up to quarterly, and then try to work ourselves up to monthly, and rotate around the state. And that is what inspires me, having those weekly games. I was more productive when I had a regular Garage Hammer buddy than I've ever been in my painting career, because it was like every couple of weeks we wanted to put something new on the table. And I was nowhere near as prolific as my buddy Jeremy was, because that guy would knock out a new army in a couple of weeks. But I'm just a slower painter. He's just a really fast painter. But that does inspire you, and you end up with tons of models that way, good models. And it helps you get that spark again, because the fact of the matter is, if you're not playing games and you don't have events to go to, unless you're just really into painting.
Well, I was going to be the contrarian there and say there are some people that they just like to churn through and build an army or paint individual models, or they're all about the hobby side. And, you know,
I mean, before I met
Brett,
you,
the guy who has a game store down the street, he doesn't even go to. Whatever.
Dude, I mean, before I met you guys, I don't think I played maybe a handful of BRS games, a couple Cruel Seas games, and then assorted board games that maybe did or did not have miniatures associated with it. I was just painting stuff because I enjoyed painting stuff, and you know,
maybe I'll find a friend if I paint these things.
What's that?
That was so mean.
That was. But I love picking on Matt. No, I'm just teasing you. So that worked.
No, but I mean, really, like it wasn't like games were just kind of a secondary thing. That was like, okay, it was also like, okay, I've got to paint both sides of these so I can con a family member or a friend that you know is vaguely familiar with whatever the topic is.
And I was also going to say, based on the fact that you're a scale modeler as well, in a sense, it's right in your wheelhouse to paint stuff and not do anything with it other than put it on the shelf. So I don't think you have a guilt response the way some people who are only gamers and not scale modelers are, because they kind of are like, well, I'm painting this army and there's no one to play with, or I don't have any motivation because I don't have a game coming up. I think one of the funny things for me, and we really haven't talked about it other than talking about Adepticon AI terrain, is what motivates people to build terrain. I love building terrain. I won't necessarily say I like painting terrain, because my problem with painting terrain is I have to stop and think of a theme and go, how much of this am I building that's all going to look the same? Because I look over at my terrain shelves and I've got like 5, 6 different patterns over there, and none of it is a table worth of terrain, but it's 8 buildings or whatever, and it's something that I've played through. But I think terrain's another thing that people sometimes work in spurts, or as Chris is doing, work because we have Adepticon coming up, and damn it, print my freaking Wile E. Coyote rocks I need for that board.
And that is one thing I really respect people that love to build and paint and train and like customize it and do this awesome.
I love it.
I don't from junk. I hate terrain. I do, unless it's part of a display piece. I just can't get into it. When I painted the the spires for Adepticon, like that was painful. That was actually like I was like, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. And
my thing is, I wish I really wish we had some skirmish guys around here that wanted to play things like Necrobunda and different stuff. Because one of my favorite things, I love miniature painting, but I'm the opposite, Matt. I look sometimes online and I spend more time looking at terrain that people are building game on than I look at pieces for the game. Because in my mind, it's just when you have these amazing boards, and that's one of the reasons why I gravitated to the Heresy community. It's all the terrain when you go to Heresy events is just gorgeous. And it's just built up. I mean, I can remember going to Warhammer World and seeing that gigantic rig. It's like an ocean fuel rig that comes up out of the sea that's just built out of those little cylindrical mechanicum things. And the thing is almost 6 feet tall. It's got all these just walkways everywhere. And it's just like, I just want a game on that. It's just the coolest freaking thing. I see people do Necromunda boards with like flowing lava from forges or with like cesspools that are full of creatures. And I'm just, that gets me going.
I am going to caveat that with, I think part of the reason for that is I know I don't have anywhere to store it safely right now. Like I just don't have anywhere to put it.
Part of it. That is
I'd have to leave it at the hobby shop or give it to one of you guys to hold on, because like if I left it out, Hazel's going to grab her little hands on it and it's going to smash in a million pieces.
Told for years that we just need to build our own hobby store so that I have a reason to sit at work, yell at nerds, and build terrain all day. And we have a place to store all of our terrain, and it'll just be epic. And that's what we're going to do.
And we'll have no money because we'll be broke, but that's awesome. Well, I'll be eating ramen noodles every day.
Get Brett and Casey here, then we can split this thing 5 ways, and we can just go into retirement in our wheelchairs with our dice and be the happiest old men in the world.
Doesn't work
that's the plan. That is the plan. We've already got 3 here. We've just got to get Steve and Casey and Brett and just pull them into the Huntsville
like
board.
Referring this to as a compound. I might be out.
Exactly. That all of a sudden that's right. Matt's like, I'm out. All right.
I will say one more exception to it is the MCP train, where it's like, a New York City brownstone or a very recognizable piece of some comic, or like the Baxter Building shop, or something like that, or donut shop that looks like the Simpsons donut shop, like that type of stuff. I'm like, okay, that is a recognizable piece of terrain that is almost a character unto itself, or the Quinjet, that type of stuff. That stuff does actually interest me as I look at the Quinjet that's unbuilt on the table over there.
F minus. That's why I didn't buy one. It was sitting 2 of them on the discount shelf at the Deep, and I didn't buy them for that reason.
I bought the donut shop just because of the scene that's in, I think it's the after trailer of Deadpool, where Deadpool's sitting in the donut talking to Nick Fury.
Dude, that was a riff on one of the Iron Man movies.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Yeah, maybe that's what I've seen so many. I've been rewatching Marvel because we've been doing MCP and I couldn't place it. But then I remember that thing where he's sitting in the donut, and then I saw that online. I was like, oh, I got to buy the damn donut shop. So.
All right. Any last parting comments about Hobby Mojo, baby?
Well, I did want to caveat on one thing you were saying. You were saying that you go on social media and you look at stuff and you're like, I'm never going to remember that. One thing that I have gotten in the habit of doing on my phone is I have built folders. Right now I have a Emperor's Children folder. I have a Mechanicum folder. And when I see stuff online, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, I just do print screen and take a photograph of it. And I try to, especially if it's on Instagram or Facebook, include the person's name that that did it. I don't just take the picture because I'm not going to know where that picture's from. But I have found that I do find myself going back through like, what was that gold technique I saw? And then if I'm not going to do it right there, I might be out at a doctor's office just thumbing through my Instagram account. But I'll save it. And I have gone back. And one of the coolest things about Instagram, especially, I'm sure all the communities this way, but especially in the heresy community, if you take the time to PM someone and say, that damn model that you converted and you painted that gold on, that is some of the sweetest metalwork I have ever seen. How did you do it? And you will be surprised the number of times you will get a 1-page response that will go through everything that they did to produce that gold. Because people are really proud of what they've done. And I would encourage people that want to learn new techniques to, paid classes are great, all that kind of stuff's great. But from a social media perspective, these communities, even the people that are introverts when you meet them in public, tend to be extroverted when they have the safety of a computer screen between you and them. And they do want to share it in that forum. And I've gotten some amazing responses from people to the point where they're telling me every product they use and what their exact process was to produce that.
Well,
So,
have you ever had a problem where those images you're saving, that kind of gets intermixed with your OnlyFans downloads, and so it kind of gets a little distracting?
No, because I do that all over VPN in a totally different browser.
I pulled that one off with a straight face. Matt's like, "What?
You did.
What?"
You did.
Duly noted.
And I knew it was coming. So
you knew that. Yeah, exactly. You knew that joke was
I knew
coming.
exactly where you were going.
Oh,
so what are you downloading?
Yeah, exactly. What are you downloading again? Oh, all right. Any other Hobby Mojo? All right. Well, cool. I do want to cover a couple listener questions because some of the members of this podcast have not been on recently for an effort for these listener questions to come by. You know, Matt, there was a mail-in question, and literally it was sent on an envelope written from Mike L. And Mike L. writes, as a former resident of Virginia, how do you feel about the city of Vicksburg being moved to Mississippi?
Well, I think Virginia's at a bit of a loss, but we've more than made up for it for places like Lynchburg and Harrisonburg and all the other western.
We tried to ship those away, but we couldn't. It was weird.
It was more of a one-way trade type, send them away type thing, but didn't quite work out.
Oklahoma wasn't looking for any more cities.
No, wouldn't take them, man. Wouldn't take them.
All right. Well, I will tell Mike that next time we see him. I should see him at Siege of Vicksburg this year, here in another week and a half or week and some odd. Anyway, but we also have a question for one of our founding members, for Chris, from one of the new listeners, Rick. He says, after you left the podcast, you called them, quote, a bunch of lowbrow historical gaming wannabe influencers, especially after they mocked your beloved Space Marines, which we've done this episode like 3 times. So why, in fact, are you back on the podcast, Chris?
Because I love you guys.
That's such a weak
Okay, that's honestly because I love you guys. This whole podcast.
We're not giving out hugs. No hugs.
This podcast exists for one reason and one reason only. Because I took you two yay-hos to A-Con to play Horus Heresy, and you two gave in to John Russell pulling the skirt up the back of his leg and saying, "Come look at my little World War II game."
Is that what pizza
is? And pizza. And pizza. But let's at the bare bones, it was John Russell in a skirt with an airplane in his hand.
Brett may have been over there giving him handsies, but I was over there for the pizza.
And 72 hours later, we were going back to Michigan in my car, and Brett in the back seat said, "God, this World War II aviation stuff looks so cool. Let's start a podcast."
That still doesn't explain why you're back.
But I'm back because I'm in Huntsville, and I do love you bastards, and you also do play other things, and I like World War II stuff. I've always loved World War II aviation. I was an IL-2 skirmish guy through and through. I flew online in the little aerial simulators forever. I am just not completely sold on Blood Red Skies. It just doesn't hold my interest over time. I love
you
playing. You
can play Check Your Six. I'm sure we can arrange for that if you go to one of these big historical.
If somebody
you can come to NashCon.
I just want stuff to die. I get tired of everybody flying in every freaking direction, and I got to wait for 18 boom chits, and then we all leave the board, and one airplane's been splashed. I'm like,
Don't suck so bad.
I did all that damn math in my head for one plane to get splashed.
What's the name of that tournament World War I game? With the
Crosses of Iron, or
no. The
Wings of Glory, not that one.
No. The real fun one that Steve was.
Aerodrome.
Aerodrome. That sounds like what Chris wants to play. Is Aerodrome, something dying every couple seconds.
I just want stuff to die, and I think that probably comes from being a sci-fi war gamer. And one of the reasons I love Heresy is because shit just dies in bucket loads. I want shit to die. And I don't even care if it's my shit dying.
Are you feeling okay, Chris? Do you need to talk to someone?
Exactly.
Do we need to?
I think he needs to talk to someone.
No,
I'm not sure if that's homicidal ideation or suicidal ideation.
I'm a little worried now, honestly.
There's some ideation going on. There's a lot of violent ideation.
But it's just not epic when you do all of that work and almost nothing happens, and it's just like it's just frustrating. Or like when we do the bombing, I built that up when we did the Malta map, and we did Bretcon, and we were going to do all this bombing, and I built these freaking Italian bombers, and I got my torpedoes, and I make my little run into the harbor. I didn't get a damn torpedo off, and I mean I know that is reality.
This is the first time anyone has complained BRS is too realistic.
Exactly.
But I mean, I do know that freaking torpedo bomber was the life expectancy of freaking. Oh my God, you had no life expectancy. You had to fly freaking wings level in the aircraft. But it was just like, man,
he's just bitter because he flew in high cover and I followed him with my Hurricanes in high cover. That as soon as he got on the board, those Hurricanes dog humped his SM-79s all the way to the target. And sorry.
And my 202, my Italian fighters did nothing. Yeah, it was like I even got behind Hurricanes and I'm like, I've got his ass cold, and it was like. And then I do that flub rub roll, and it's like,
flub rub?
Is that what it's called?
This is devolving.
What exactly is going on there?
This is devolving quickly.
And this is why we love
on the podcast.
Best episode ever.
In short, why am I here? Because I love you fuckers.
In short, on that note, keep climbing for advantage, you fucking freaks.